guest here today, which is Rae Cottam, and you are part of the Legalise Cannabis Party, and you are going for the by-election in Rockingham. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, I mean, when you think about legalising cannabis, I asked you this question before. It's kind of all people think of, but you have a wider view of how you'd like to help Rockingham. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, I would like to see Rockingham's homeless community cared for with emergency housing, some kind of short-term housing, whether that be caravan parks, definitely emergency housing, like we don't have campgrounds, so somewhere you could pitch a tent, somewhere if you have an emergency situation like domestic violence, there's somewhere to stay because sometimes our local resources are full. But the bigger picture, the urban sprawl, we need to go up. We need to invest in more apartment living. We need to have spaces available that we don't have at the moment. And Mandurah has been getting the attention and funding from the government, and we need that in Rockingham also. So during election time, some of our homeless people are moved around to Fremantle, Perth City, but they always come back, and these people are invisible and they don't need to be. So we, as a community, as local and the state and federal government, everyone has a responsibility to care for our community members.
So there's about 3,500 homeless people in Rockingham. About 500 of those are actually living rough at the moment. So, a lot of people, although they are considered homeless because they may be staying on couches for other people, they actually don't have a home to go to. And families, unfortunately, are living out of cars and things like that because they can't find, they've got money to pay rent, but they can't find homes to go to. So you think more investment in buildings in Rockingham, and how do we get that investment?
Okay, so we need to pressure all local government, federal and state government to have different tiers of accommodation. So it's emergency, short stay and long-term accommodation. So I myself spent 5 months homeless last year, like you said, living out of the car, staying with family, and I did have a job and I did have money, but there's no houses available. So I think less than 1% of national rentals available. So for me, I couldn't get an air bed and breakfast. I couldn't get a hotel room. I couldn't get, you're on Gumtree every day. And because I work with homeless people, this is something that I've been aware of for a long time. So sharing my point of view within my role at council, advocating that we do need accommodation, we need something, became personal because I myself was in that position. So
lived experience.
So we do need investment, and you do need the short term. So and campgrounds, you can't pitch a tent anywhere, and if you do, or you run the risk of getting a fine, and there's nothing worse when you're more vulnerable. Yeah, so I do believe that we do need caravan parks because they're always full, and people who want to come to Rockingham to visit, there's nowhere for them to stay, let alone people who are local or experiencing homelessness. And like you said, people couch surfing, people moving around. Yeah.
Can we talk about a little bit more about the Legalise Cannabis Party? How did you come to align with them?
Okay, so Legalise Cannabis Party, I was originally introduced to Dr. Brian Walker. I was referred by a friend. I was experiencing some health difficulties, and I was a bit ashamed at first to think that I was going to seek some medicinal marijuana as healing benefit. So I tried some CBD oil, which actually healed a condition that I was having for 2 years. So I was on antibiotics and all kinds of different medicine, bush medicine as well, holistic care to heal this condition I was having, and nothing did that. So when I sought relief from that oil that I was using on my skin, I could not believe it. So, I wanted to find out more, what is actually in this. So, and I was scared to actually try that orally. So I didn't until I was in an emergency situation where I was having throwing up, and I was light sensitive, and I had a migraine, and I had somewhere to be in a few hours. So I was like, I'm going to try this. So, typical relief would be having Panadine Forte, staying in the dark, and just riding that migraine out. And within 15 minutes of having some oil, just a very small amount, I could feel the pressure in my head disappear. So that's originally how I was referred to the party, was through myself seeking some treatment. And I was just blown away with the benefits that something could heal me, take away my pain, and I could actually go to work and do the things that I needed to do. I could actually belong. That actually gave me a sense of
life
myself.
again.
Yeah,
allowed you to be a functioning member of society again.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, what's really hard hearing that is that you feared judgment, but you needed to be able to be a functional member of society, and so you didn't reach out and get what you needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I'm in that position, how many other people would be in that position when they could be seeking, they could have some kind of relief and quality of life?
So that's where your passion has come from. And do you find that the community is educated about cannabis and its medicinal purposes?
I am hearing that people are educated. Some people aren't, and some are. I'm very surprised that our senior members of the community are more educated than others, because they have sought treatment and relief from oils, and they're having difficulty accessing it. So I'm just amazed at how many seniors, and they are the same, that the stigma around marijuana or medicinal cannabis has prevented them from seeking treatment, or what would other people think, and talking to their friends and family about it, that the stigma prevented them from relief.
Can you tell us a little about other countries that obviously have legalized cannabis? What kind of statistics, or what can you bring to me in terms of education-wise on why this should be legalized in Western Australia, let alone Australia?
Okay, so the economical benefits that could bring to Western Australia, just on our figures alone, is over, $200 million a year. If you
and there are farms already.
Yes, so we do have farms, and the eastern states have relaxed their laws around industrial hemp, and we need to have that more regulated and relaxed in Western Australia also, because we could be solving this housing issue by having hemp housing.
There's more purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So it's quicker to grow. It takes out more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It's better for soils.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So we could be having houses that are quicker to produce, and that solves the shortage that we're having in the industry with supplies
and products. Yeah, definitely.
So other countries, their tax benefits, we could implement some of the similar kind of regimes where you can grow up to 2 plants, something we had similar years ago with our government. And tax rates could go back into the economy. If it was decriminalised here, we'd have over $100 million a year that could be put into, mental health or housing or education. So if that was decriminalised, the corrections, police, jails, that's a lot of money and time that could be better spent and invested to our community.
I have to do the other side of the coin here, is where that people think because it is a legal drug that's the reason why people are in jail, that that this is the cause of some of the crime and things like that, because it is considered a drug, What do you say to that?
Okay, I can understand, because that's the same thing I was taught at school. You know, it's illegal, you don't touch it, you don't use it, and if you do, this is
You're
what's
more
involved.
likely to commit crimes. You're more likely
Yes.
as a gateway drug to lead to other drugs.
Absolutely. However, the evidence now that we're seeing doesn't suggest that, and that more people.
Where's the evidence coming from?
Yeah, so international reports. A West Australian big report just came out months ago from the University of Western Australia, and that, you know, the gateway drug, other people, we use alcohol more, and people who are using methamphetamines or other kinds of drugs are allowed to drive, where people, if they have THC in their system, that's a misdemeanor or, you know, a finable offence. So these are the things that clog up the justice system, that if we relax those laws, where if you have prescription for medicinal cannabis, you can have trace levels of THC in your body, where in the instance right now it's not. So that's a criminal offence, and you'll be fined or you'll be put into jail if you are charged with more offences. So
Is it something that's regularly prescribed, or is it something that doctors are reluctant to prescribe?
from what I'm hearing, that some doctors aren't aware of how to prescribe it and are fearful. So
I would say it would be very heavily
very,
regulated, that if a doctor was prescribing it and continued to, that they would probably be looked at. I don't know that, but I'm suggesting that it would be heavily regulated and not easy to get.
No, it's not. So even just filling your prescription is difficult to find. So relaxing those laws around the regulation of that scale of the medicine, making it more available, and educating more doctors at being able to prescribe to their clients. My auntie, she was the first person in the state to have the legal assisted dying with, she had motor neuron disease, and in her last days she was using the oil. So in any other instance she would be on morphine, and that, you know, quality of time, you know, we got to spend with her while she was herself. She perhaps what I've seen with other people on morphine, it's very in and out and lucid. So
I now can understand your passion about legalizing this when you've had someone in your family, you know, that is terminal, and then to have something like this relief that actually gives you more, you know, as morphine would obviously not make them in a state of being able to converse, being able for them to be themselves and be present with you. But you're saying that the medical marijuana actually gave her an opportunity to be with you as herself. And made the quality that you got to spend with her a lot more valuable.
Absolutely. So she, you know, she was allowed that, she was prescribed that, and the time that we spent with her, she was laughing, she was joking, and she was herself. She was tired at the end of the day. She was in, you know, hospital 9 days before that event occurred, and, you know, family got to visit from Kalgoorlie, from all over the state, all over the countryside, got to actually visit her, and she was herself, and reasonably pain-free. And I also know people who have epilepsy whose seizures have stopped. You know, if a young child's seizures cease because of this oil, I can't understand why it would be withheld as a treatment from anybody. And, you know, making doctors aware and training them, and pushing for prescriptions to be shared to clients and patients is something that needs to be done, and putting the oils and medicinal marijuana on the PBS, because it's quite expensive. So, you know, getting it covered by the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, but also something I'm interested and the party's interested in is a compassionate access scheme. So people who are already suffering, you know, aren't going to be out of pocket by the large cost that it is. And some people would prefer to spend that money otherwise, when they could be, you know,
Yeah, it
having
almost makes it for
treatment.
those that can afford it can get the benefit, but those that can't afford it won't receive the benefit. And as you've been saying, it's, it can shape someone's, if they're terminally ill, can shape their days into something a lot better towards the end. What surprises me is that you have to form a political party around the fact that you want to legalise it. It can't be something that the Labor or Liberal or even the Greens might help you legalise it. You actually have to form your own political party about legalising it.
Yeah, so some of the Greens actually have been pushing for this legalisation as well. I know it's been discussed by Labor, and one of our local candidates, she aligns with all of the questions that we've been asking her around, do you believe in deregulating hemp? Do you believe that we should have treatments on the PBS? So yes, there's a whole party has been
because there's so many
designed.
more issues in relation to politics that when you stamp a political party with legalised cannabis, a lot of people will be, oh, well, what about the other issues? So you're not just focused, even though that's the name of your party, you're not just focused on that.
No, so policy and legislation needs to be changed, and that's what the party is about, and pushing government to make these changes and all the other things around that. So looking at driving laws, but the party, is pro-choice, so they're not aligned with just one position, whereas Liberal or Labor would be. But having that dedication and focus from the party to make those changes and write policy and legislation and put pressure on government is important as well.
Yeah, very important, especially to get your message across and get more support behind what you believe.
And allow people to have that understanding, because I think that a lot of people would probably sit there and think they just want they're just a bunch of hippies and they want everyone to be able to roll their own joints, So to get that information out there, that it's not about a group of delinquents, it's about people who have passion for the homelessness situation, for an understanding that people deserve to live a life that is pain-free, or that there is dignity in death, rather than, I guess, this misunderstanding about what your party is about.
And there's treatment options that aren't related to strong medications that may help relieve, as you said, you got it, that were actually preventing you from living a full and rich life.
Absolutely. And for that, that life-changing experience, perhaps I didn't, if I hadn't had that, maybe I would have had those delinquent, ideas. I'm more open to, than other people, but, ending that stigma that, just not a bunch of hippies, smoking around, that, people with post-traumatic stress can have their symptoms relieved, where they can actually go do shopping because they're not so anxious around, noises and people. Giving any kind of relief to these ailments from a natural therapy that's been around for a very long time, I can't understand why it hasn't been legalised sooner.
And you're standing up and you're saying, this is what I believe and I strongly believe it. Now, you are Rockingham born and bred, aren't you? So a lot of people will know you, Rae. Will they know this about you?
No, they wouldn't know that I was seeking treatment because it was a very private issue. Yes. So unless people were asking about it, I wasn't sharing that information. And I guess, the stigma around that kind of therapy, although I've been taught in bush medicines and I was using bush medicine, that was the best therapy I had. It wasn't until I was using the CBD THC oil that I actually could act, belong and commit. I had my life back, and then with the migraine pain, my condition was healing, and then I could use it for something else that would knock me sometimes for 3 days, and just, wow, I actually can belong now. I can actually do my job. And, I was just so real. I was myself again, and to have that relief. People do know me in the community, and I remember in high school, some friends saying to me, legalise weed. I'm not going to vote for you until you legalise weed. So I've been chatting to them, and, you can have that opportunity now. I'll be campaigning, but, voting day is coming up on the 29th. So I'm going to hold you up to that vote from 20 years ago. You said you were going to vote for me. So you need to vote for me. And it's, oh, wow, I did say that. So, and just spreading the word that, this is this party's here. We want to see changes for the community, and a local who has experienced a long, 47 years of Labor. I'm 37 this year, so for my whole life it's been safe Labor C, and
there's certainly a lot of talk about that, and the fact that there hasn't been any change in Rockingham because we are so Labor focused. I think in terms of education and the community, we are certainly educated now that if change doesn't occur, nothing will change.
Absolutely. And putting pressure on, perhaps the Labor Party will, okay, well, this seat isn't so safe. We've got a bit of a shake-up, and it's putting pressure to invest in the community, invest in infrastructure. Our Premier lives up the road, and, he's seen the homeless situation for a long time, but nothing changed, and he had the power to change that. And so did the party, and so does the still party does have the power. So to see some investment is important, because I've been here for a long time. People on the street I'm seeing sleeping around, or the rough sleepers, they've seen it. So why isn't there change, and when will change occur?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and one you're posing at the moment, hence why you're standing. The election is on the 29th of July. As I was saying before, people have seen you around, but tell us a little bit about your volunteering, because you actually have such a strong community base of where you've come from in Rockingham, and how you've kind of been able to make an impact.
Yeah, so my mum, she was all about, stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. If you see someone who needs help and you can help them, offer that help. So I've always grown up with that attitude, and I've shared that with my children. Sometimes it's just, having things in the car that are readily available. So backpacks full of socks, jocks, tampons, wipes, food that is edible for people who don't have strong teeth, hygiene products, toothbrush, toothpaste, mints, and, something that's you don't need a can opener for, but something that you can eat. Hand warmers. So I do receive donations as a member of Sisters Community Care, a local organisation, and just going around and, having blankets, sleeping bags, clothes, underwear, shoes, anything that someone who's homeless needs, having them in the back of the car. And just because I've been homeless, and because I know what it looks like, it's just asking someone, without shame, hey, uncle, can I've got something in the back of the car, can I give that to you? Waterproof, because if it's raining and it's the middle of a storm, they need something dry, because they're wet, and then how do they dry that stuff for tomorrow? So they're going to need new stuff. So
Rae, listening to you then, you use the right language. It wasn't that I'm helping you, it's that I've got something in the back, and do you want it? Because I don't want it anymore. Or it's the way you approach them to make them feel that dignity, is that, no, you don't need help, but you're actually helping me. And that approach, I loved hearing that.
It's beautiful. It's important to allow people to have their dignity.
Absolutely, especially because I know what that.
I love how
like.
your face changed then. Your face just changed immediately. Like, that's exactly what everyone deserves.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's okay, because I've been in that position myself, and you don't want to, somebody who's already vulnerable, I wouldn't want to offend them in any way. So it's having compassion and not pushing that. And I never tell anybody that what I do for my job. I never say, oh, thanks, nice to meet you, and I'll tell them my name, but I don't claim that I do, because I don't do it for a job. I do it for myself, and I do it for the community, because if I can help somebody else, that's going to make, the community strong, and it's going to make them safer. And it's it's not always a good place to be out on the streets. And where do you find wind block? Where do you find protection from the rain? And, safe from other people. So I'm very compassionate, and I wouldn't want to take away someone's dignity or rights, because we all have that.
Understanding that, you know what, every person is one bad event away from this situation.
Absolutely.
And look, I'm very grateful. I'm very lucky because I have a strong family network around me who have finances that could help me in that situation. But not everyone is in a situation where they might have family that absolutely love and adore them, but they can't shell out $2,000 for a bill that's just come up.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you are a renter and something happens, or that house is sold, there's no other rentals on the market. So,
and that's a very, very good situation that you bring up, is that, they are open to, if you're renting at the moment, you are at, the mercy of the person who says, well, I'm going to sell that house now. And you don't have an opportunity to go out and look at a lot of houses because there's just not around, and you could be in that.
I told you that story. Yep. I drove around my street and I thought a funeral had happened because there were all these cars parked up on the side of the street, but it was a rental. Like, they'd opened up a house to rent, and all these people had just flocked, and there's only one house and there was probably 50, 60 cars parked there. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the worst. And so you're competing sometimes with 100 other people for looking for a house that's, much more expensive than it was 2 years ago, or that it needs to be because of the demand. And there's nothing available. And so some people, are spending their time going to look at these housing opens, and they're, rough sleepers, or they're sleeping in the car. And, these houses may be purchased by investors or interstate or, overseas, or somebody online who wasn't even at the house open actually got to receive that house. So we're in a big crisis, and it's been coming for a long time. We've been at capacity, and nothing has really changed. So we really need to make change.
Do you think it's poor preparation?
Well, possibly poor preparation. The demand of the market and the economy does change things. So people are selling because they, their finances are tighter than they were. Cost of living's gone up. Perhaps their wages haven't gone up, and so it's easier to just sell. Retirees, But
do you think it's poor planning by the government?
I think there is a role to play from local, state, and federal governments, because no one's investing. No one has made changes, and why not? When they have the power to do that, and it's been coming for a long time. Like, we've known that there's a rental crisis for a very long time.
So I did get a list of questions, which I think a lot of them we've covered, but I just want to make sure that I go through them to give you the opportunity and your party to, definitely put your views across. The first question was, what has been the greatest challenge trying to legalise something that hasn't been viewed as a positive tool for medicine?
Changing opinion, like we were talking about people having that quality of life, so changing that stigma. And luckily enough, the people I thought would be the most difficult to talk to about it, they're already talking about it because their husbands have arthritis. So, they've seen their husbands, pain relief. So they've tried it for themselves. So, they're back playing badminton because they haven't been able to do that because their knees hurt too much, or they've been in too much pain. So that pain relief is what I'm finding a good tool to talk to people about, because people are already talking about it.
Yeah. Can you share some of your most positive experiences on cannabis, which I think we have, helping shape the lives of those that use medical cannabis as a preferred choice of therapy?
Yeah, so some people who would experience post-traumatic stress or flashbacks from their traumas, belonging in the community, just doing simple things like going to the shopping centre where noises trigger them, they can do that now because the anxiety that they faced is relieved, because they couldn't find that in antidepressants or antipsychotics or typical prescriptions, whereas the medicinal cannabis gives them that relief where the anxiety is relieved, where they can actually do the day-to-day activities that we all take for granted.
I guess also with I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, please, that with the medications that are prescribed by doctors, has to be a weaning off period. But is there any kind of weaning off? Like if I'm taking cannabis oil and I just no, I mean, like if you are on antidepressants, you have to wean yourself off. You cannot just go, I don't want to take these anymore and stop taking it because you have a massive come down. I don't know if that's the right word. So is that something that's involved with CBD oil?
Not that I've seen, because myself, I was using it and I stopped using it, and there's no withdrawal because it's not addictive.
Withdrawal was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, so I do understand that with antidepressants, you need to slowly break them down over an amount of time. So the you not having a manic episode or anxiety is prevented, whereas I didn't experience any of that myself, and people that I've spoken to, it's not an issue. But I'll ask more questions and look into that, because from what I'm seeing, there's no addiction. You don't crave it. I just found relief and just healing, just putting something on my skin. And like every now and then, if I have a migraine or I'm having chronic pain, I can use that. So other people experiencing chronic pain have had relief, and I'm not sure. That's a question I will be asking people who have used that for that and long terms. But from what I'm seeing from data and talking to people, no one has had that as an issue. Whereas
I guess
weaning
it's
off medication.
about getting that data out there to make sure that there's scientific evidence about, and I guess it needs more case studies, doesn't it, so that we actually have that
people aren't using it.
And legalizing. Do you have any concerns about the possibility of the negative effects within Australia if it becomes completely legalized? So if we're talking about it's accessible, and the thing is, if it's accessible to parents, is it accessible to children?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the other side of the argument that I'm facing. So we know that 78% of West Australians believe in decriminalising, and that more people use alcohol than marijuana.
Very good point.
And less users of tobacco. So marijuana is sitting in the middle. So something that's already out there, that's already being used, could be regulated in a way that it's cleaner, it's safer, and it could be taxed so we can still have economic benefits. Absolutely. So if it's something that's already around, we're not going to beat the war on marijuana, because it's been around since the times of Jesus. So it's been used for materials, textiles, ropes, clothing. So it's been around for a long time. So why don't we capitalize on that and use it to the benefit the community and the government? If it's already readily available and can be found, in the black market, I don't believe that it's going to be more readily available if it was decriminalised, because it's already there. It's already in the community. And I think the focus needs to be on harder drugs that are crippling the mental health system, like methamphetamines.
Vaping.
Oh my Lord,
Yes. So it's everywhere. Young people are just going crazy with the vaping because it's so found, and the health, it can be so
Once
detrimental.
again, more studies need to be done on vaping so that we can release it to kids, because unfortunately it's marketed to children with bubblegum flavours and things like that. So it's more palatable and easier for them to get their hands on. And from what I can see, highly addictive. From what people are saying, they've found it very hard to put down a vape, more harder than they have to put down a cigarette. So, and people are changing from smoking cigarettes to vape. Sorry to change the subject there, but, vaping is definitely something that we need to address as well. What has been the most convincing argument against the legalization of cannabis, and what is your counter argument towards it? So for me, it would be the access to children and making sure children can't access this, or that it is regulated well.
Yeah, so if you are under 16 and you have epilepsy and seizures, you can access this as a treatment covered by the PBS. Otherwise, you'll be looking for it on the black market, and that's what families resort to.
And that's ridiculous when if it's scientifically proved, and I have actually watched an ABC stories where a kid had quite severe epilepsy and medicinal cannabis helped them live a quality of life that was just to the opposite extreme. And the loops that this family had to jump through to be able to get this cannabis oil, and as you said, going to the black market because they couldn't get the support of their GP and things like that. I think that's a strong counter argument on your case.
Absolutely.
What changes need to be made by the state government wise for Rockingham?
In general, or for the party, or what does Rockingham need to see?
Yes, I would love to see in terms of Rockingham.
Absolutely. So we're a very strong boating community, and I was talking with another candidate, and we are just absolutely mind-boggled that our local boat ramps are not covered by the department and the state funding, so they're all covered by local rates. So moving access and maintenance to local boat ramps would be something that is very important. So candidate Hayley Edwards, the independent, we've been talking about that is a big push because we're such a big boating town, and we'd like
Haven't we had like something like 11 or something marinas drawn up, and yet we've failed to get them happening. But in saying that, isn't Mindari getting its third or fourth marina putting in, and yet we can't even get one, given the amount of boats that are in our community?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's we need a draw card for that. It needs to be environmentally, safe and sustainable space, and that doesn't mess with our local tides and drift waters and land reclaim, because of when you dig up something here, it's going to catch sand there. And what do we need? We need a study to decide, and people for our local community decide what they want to see in means for a marina. So definitely infrastructure. We need more infrastructure, and like we said, community housing, something that's affordable, that's up, not out, and investment and change. Absolutely, we need to see that.
What are your three priorities? Like, what if people vote for you? What are your priorities moving forward should you be elected?
So I would like to see a 24-hour police station in Rockingham. So we've just seen some new ones come up around in other suburbs, but we are a very fast-growing city, and
Baldivis is extremely fast-growing.
Yep. So and we do need something that's 24/7, because crime doesn't stop, and
people want to feel safe.
People want to feel safe, and that presence needs to be seen and heard. During COVID, so many different statistics went up, and police weren't available because we were underfunded and we weren't open all the time. And I'd like to see that. The decriminalisation of the medicinal marijuana. So seeing that, pushing for that, and pushing for a access scheme, compassionate access scheme, where people can access these therapies at an affordable price until the government is covering them by the PBS. Yeah.
Rae, I've really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your point of view, and I think it's commendable that you're standing up and saying this experience is me and this is why I'm pushing for these things, and to be in such a huge stage, because it is a lot. I wouldn't be a politician for...
Oh, no, thank you.
No. And
you are very brave.
You are very brave, and I appreciate that you've come in and spoken to us about this and educated me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do feel like I have more knowledge now, and I can totally understand your position and why you're standing.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for the opportunity to chat today, and the radio for inviting me and sharing all the candidates' experiences and questioning them and putting them on the stage to say, what would you like to see change, because it's time for change. It really is. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have a sponsor for this show, and it's KJD Landscaping.
Absolutely.
So we're going to play their ad and their song and then come back with a little bit of a tip on how you can better look after your gardens.